So my name is Court Tompkins. I have the great privilege to be the CTO here at IP Configure. And today we are going to go over what is new in the latest release of Orchid VMS version 24.3. So there is a Q&A section in the webinar. So if you have questions as I'm talking, please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A and I will answer them at the end. Cool. All right. So yeah, Orchid 24.3. As always, I'll do a little bit of a review of what makes up the Orchid product family. In one of our recent talks, we talked about how Orchid Core VMS is now Orchid Recorder. So I've still got that transition noted on my slides here. I think in probably the next webinar that we do on version 24.6, we'll get rid of that. We'll just call it Orchid Recorder. But for some longtime customers, from some older customers who maybe missed some previous webinars, Orchid Core is now Orchid Recorder. So we're going to cover everything that's new in Orchid Recorder on the NVR side, as well as what's new in the management interface, Orchid Fusion, Orchid Hybrid, and Orchid Alto. All right, so just as a refresher, the Orchid architecture really consists of two pieces. There's a recording server that's generally installed on-prem at each one of your locations. We call that Orchid Recorder. And then there's a head-in management server. Might be called Orchid Hybrid if it's hosted in the cloud. It might be called Orchid Fusion if you host it in your infrastructure. But these are two different interfaces. The Orchid Fusion or Orchid Hybrid interface has more features. It's an enterprise product. Orchid Recorder has its own user interface, very similar to Orchid Fusion and Orchid Hybrid, but not as many features because it's only there at a single location. All right, so first let's talk about what's new in Orchid Recorder at the actual NVR level. As a refresher from maybe the last talk or the talk before, Orchid Recorder is going to be a different color. The user interface is going to be a different color based on which edition you're using. If you're an Orchid Hybrid customer, IP Configure hosts Orchid Hybrid for you in the cloud. It'll be that nice reddish pink color. If you're an Orchid Fusion customer and you're hosting Orchid Fusion in your own infrastructure, it'll be that purple color. All of the features that are available at the NVR level in Orchid Recorder are also going to be available in your main enterprise interface, Orchid Fusion or Orchid Hybrid. All right, so one of the more significant changes, although right now it is still a little bit behind the scenes, is that in Orchid Recorder, we now have the ability to configure and push automatic software upgrades for Orchid Recorder. In 24.3, this is exclusive to Debian Linux distributions. So this is mostly going to be Orchid Recorder servers that are running the Ubuntu operating system. That is probably the overwhelming majority of our recording servers out there, well into the 90%. And so with this, we can go into the advanced settings section of Orchid and configure Orchid to automatically upgrade itself whenever a new release is available. Right now, this is a feature that's a little more IT-centric. So we're really targeting more advanced users, more IT-oriented users. If you know what an apt repo is, if you know how packages are managed on Ubuntu, IP Configure now provides an apt repo for Orchid Recorder. And through the advanced settings interface in Orchid Recorder, we can configure the system to automatically install updated packages, updated Orchid Recorder versions from that apt repo. Again, little IT-centric right now. This is infrastructure that customers can absolutely use within their own Orchid Fusion instance. And on the Orchid Hybrid side, IP Configure, we're using this infrastructure ourselves, using this apt repo and these settings here in the advanced settings page to push out Orchid Recorder updates for our Orchid Hybrid customers. Right now, these automatic updates, again, are exclusive to Debian Linux. Other operating systems are coming soon. Notably, we'll have a mechanism to automatically install Orchid Recorder updates for Red Hat and CentOS systems. And probably most exciting for me personally is Windows systems. At IP Configure, we really like Linux. Linux makes automating tasks really easy. You can do a lot of the same stuff on Windows, but for a lot of people, Windows is a little bit more of a manual process. So what we find is that a lot of our customers who are using Orchid Recorder on Windows, it tends not to get updated as frequently. So we're excited to bringing some automated updates to Windows eventually. But again, for right now, it's for Ubuntu, but this has big benefits for both IT and end users. End users are getting new features of Orchid Recorder as they're available, and IT is making sure that your NVR systems are patched and getting the latest security updates. So automatic updates, that is new for Orchid Recorder in 24.3. Okay, the next big Orchid Recorder feature, and this is a pretty significant UI feature that we've implemented, is thumbnail search. So this is another way to quickly navigate and search video in Orchid. It works alongside or together with Smart Search, so you can combine thumbnail search and Smart Search together and get Smart Thumbnail Search. And what thumbnail search does, it's a view that I can bring up in Orchid where it will show me thumbnails of motion events. First at the hour level, then I can drill into thumbnail events at the hour level, look at thumbnail views whenever there's motion for each particular minute. Then I can click and start playing back video from that minute. So let me go to a Orchid hybrid instance here in our office in Virginia, and let's take a look at how this works. So right now I've got a couple of players on the Orchid hybrid stage. Right now I'm in Orchid hybrid, but again, this feature is also available if you're using the NVR directly in Orchid Recorder. And I am looking at some views of our warehouse, and I know that this morning there was a very important sign right here. You see this yellow sign in some of these views. So that sign was there this morning, and if I go to live video, I see that sign is gone. That sign is a very important piece of safety equipment. I want to know when it disappeared. Now I can grab this timeline bar and I can scrub around and maybe find when the sign disappeared, or I can pick a view, click a search button here on the player. I'm going to pick this player in the bottom left. And now I've got two different options. I've got Smart Search. Smart Search is where I can draw a box around a region and just show motion in that region. We've had that feature for some time. But there's an additional button I can click here for thumbnail search. So I'm going to click that now. Now that I've clicked that, I see that I have a thumbnail view of every hour in the current day where motion was detected on this player. And I can scroll through this list and pretty conveniently see when that important sign disappeared. So I see that sign was there in the 12 o'clock hour here. I see the sign is missing at the 1 p.m. hour. So I'm going to click into the 12 o'clock hour, scroll down. Now I have thumbnails for every minute where there was motion detected, and I can very quickly scroll down and see when that sign disappeared and find the perpetrator. So pretty simple and fast way to navigate video. As I mentioned, this thumbnail search is also available in conjunction with Smart Search. So let's see how that might work. Right now I have thumbnail search enabled. I'm also going to click my Smart Search icon and now draw a box around where that sign was. And now you'll see I only see thumbnail search events when motion was detected in the region that I specified with Smart Search. So this allows me to find the video even faster. I can see frames where people were in that region where the sign was. Perhaps these are accomplices or co-conspirators of the sign taker. And yeah, just a fast and convenient way to navigate video within Orchid Recorder and Orchid Hybrid or Orchid Fusion. So that is thumbnail search and Smart Thumbnail Search, new in 24.3. We also have a small tweak to the way the timeline bar works. So this is a behavior change that makes going into selection mode a bit more deliberate. So previously in Orchid Hybrid or Orchid Recorder, if I clicked on the date time tag on the timeline bar and drug it to the side, we would enter what's called selection mode. And selection mode is a sort of a specialized mode in the timeline bar that allows you to specify an exact start and stop of a time region. It's useful for exporting precise amounts of video. But what we found is users, maybe relatively new users or users that are just trying to use the software quickly, would get themselves into this selection mode. That wasn't what they want. Maybe they didn't know how to get out. So right now with 24.3, the only way to get in selection mode is to positively enable it with a up button on the right side of the timeline bar. Just pulling that time indicator to the side no longer puts you into selection mode. Selection mode is a little bit more of an advanced feature, so we don't want users to enter that mode accidentally. So see what I'm talking about here, again, in our Orchid hybrid demo system. So for example, I have my timeline bar here at live on the bottom of the screen. If I take this time indicator and drag it to the side, Now, beginning in 24.3, we just begin playing back to wherever I drag that timeline indicator. In previous versions, we would go into selection mode, which is now only accessible by clicking this up arrow on the right. Selection mode, it's a pretty powerful feature. It's a unique feature. It allows me to select a precise region of video using these coarse and fine selectors at the top and bottom. It definitely has its place, but again, we now want that to be a little bit more of a deliberate mode to get into so users don't accidentally find themselves in selection mode and not know how to get out. All right, so relatively small change in 24.3, but one that folks had asked for. Yep. Okay, so now let's talk about what's new on the management server side. So these are new features in Orchid Fusion, Orchid Hybrid, and Orchid Auto 24.3. A couple of new big features there as well that we're excited to talk about. The first is Orchid Recorder recovery and migration. So this is a new way to replace an Orchid Recorder server with another Orchid Recorder server in an existing enterprise system. And it really simplifies the process of swapping one server out with another, because what this allows me to do is replace the server while still retaining a lot of the configuration options for that server. So things like permission groups, email alerts, motion alert notifications, camera groups, all the things that I would set up specific to a server in Orchid Hybrid, I can now retain those when I swap a server out. I don't have to delete one server and then add a new server. I can do a hot swap and save a lot of those configuration settings. So we think this is a valuable tool for integrators and administrators of large systems, and it's part of an ongoing effort we have to make Orchid Recorder servers more fungible, as we say, so easier to swap in and out, more replaceable. So if you've got a big enterprise system and you have an Orchid Recorder maybe with a hardware issue or it's failed in the field, this makes it easy to hot swap in a replacement server. Or if you're upgrading a server, it also makes it easier to affect that upgrade. So I'll show an example of what that might look like here on our demo server. So I'm going to go to the navigation menu here in the top right corner. I'm going to click the servers button, and now longtime Orchid users might notice that there is an additional button here on the servers list. So Orchid Recorder Alpha is an Orchid Recorder demo server here in our office. Previously, the edit icon allowed me to recover the server in a way that just completely replaced it. It didn't migrate the server, an old server, over to a new server. So right now, the edit button just lets me change the name, and the replacement function is now replaced by this recover button. It's a little gear there. So what I can do is hit that gear, and I can now specify the name of a new server that I'm replacing this old server with. So again, imagine the old server is being upgraded, or maybe the old server has failed, and I've now got a new server on site that I want to take its place. So what I can do is provide the address and credentials of the new server, and I'm now presented with a dialog where I can map settings between the old server and the new server. And this is specifically designed around mapping cameras over. So in most cases, if my old server had 85 cameras configured, I'm going to install a new server with 85 cameras, and I can map the camera names on the old server to the camera names on the new server, and all of my configurations around these cameras will be retained. So permission groups, camera settings, email, motion alerts, notifications, all of those will be retained during that migration. This is not a great example because the existing server has 85 cameras. The new server only has one camera, but in this dialog, I would say, hey, on the old server, this camera is now called this. On the new server, if the cameras have the same names or same IP addresses, we have some helpful little buttons here that makes this process really fast. So I map the old cameras to the new cameras, hit next. I get a dialog telling me which cameras are going to be removed, which cameras are being migrated, which cameras are being added new in the new server, and now I can replace my server. So a lot going on there, but again, the idea is basically if you've got a server that you're replacing in the field, this makes the process a lot smoother. So that is Orchid Recorder recovery and migration. The next sort of small quality of life improvement is about that darn Orchid Hybrid checkbox. For Orchid Hybrid customers, we do have an access agreement that our lawyers tell us that we need to include, and there's a checkbox that you have to check before you sign in. Before 24.3, the sign-in button would be disabled if the checkbox weren't checked. hung up some users, get folks who thought that perhaps the system wasn't working right because the sign-in box wouldn't let them sign in. You can now just click that button. If you haven't checked the checkbox, you'll get a pop-up which will ask you to review and accept the agreement. So small thing, but makes Orchid a little bit easier. All right, so the second big feature on the management server side that was new in 24.3 is what we call sub-admins or sub-administrators, recorder administrators. So this is a feature that allows Orchid Hybrid and Fusion users to perform administrative functions on select Orchid recorders, but not be administrators to the entire Orchid Hybrid system. Excuse me. So these are users that have no administrative privileges within Fusion or Hybrid itself, but they can administer, and in some cases, depending on settings, register and delete Orchid recorders. So this is really designed around big enterprise customers who have multiple integrators or multiple regional employees. So if I'm a big company, maybe I've got one integrator in the Northeast and one integrator in the Southeast. And this way I can give administrators or field techs for my integrators access to the systems that they actually service without giving them access to the entire Orchid Hybrid system or giving them access to change settings or administer servers in regions that they don't cover. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I am back in our Orchid Hybrid demo site. I'm going to go into a permissions group, and I am going to find a permission group that I have somewhat indecorously named Trunk Slammers LLC Field Techs. So the idea is that perhaps this is an integrator. I'm going to edit that group. So this is an Orchid Hybrid permission group, not too different than what we've had previously. I give it a name, I give members of the group, but we now have an admin settings tab where I can control a couple of different types of admin privileges. I can make this permission group a full administrator. So this gives them free reign to change settings within Orchid Fusion and Orchid Hybrid, as well as all of the attached Orchid recorder recording servers. But new in 24.3, I can say that this group only has the ability to be an admin on specific Orchid recorders. They can't change settings for the parent management system. So I can give them access to change admin settings on all of the recording servers, or perhaps only certain servers in their region. So in this case, I'm just going to say folks in this permission group can only change settings on this one specific Orchid server. You'll notice that I can optionally control a group's ability to add new Orchid recorders. So again, the idea here is if you have an integrator, they need to be able to change settings on the recorders that they're managing, but maybe they're spinning up new sites, setting up new installations. You also want them to be able to add recorders as well. So I'm going to save this permission group. I'm going to log out now. I will no longer be a Fusion admin, and I am going to log in as this theoretical integrator. And you will see that in my admin menu here in the top right, I no longer have all of the Orchid Fusion or Orchid Hybrid administrator settings. I can't control access to the parent system, to the management interface, but I do have a list of servers, and I can see the Orchid recorder servers that I'm assigned, and I can do all of the normal administrative functions like add, delete cameras, change camera names, change camera settings. Based on my permissions, I did give this sub-admin group the ability to register new Orchid recorders. So if I'm installing a new store or a new location in my region, I can register a new Orchid recorder. It'll be a part of the groups that I have access to. But again, I'm segmented to just the specific Orchid recording servers that I've been given access to. So that's how sub-admins work. Again, something that's targeted towards larger enterprise installations, often folks that have multiple integrators servicing their recording servers. All right. So that's sub-admins, and that is everything that is new in Orchid 24.3. Orchid 24.6 is pretty close. It'll be out probably in a month or two. There's a number of features that may be included. If they're in this list, we're pretty certain they're going to be included, but we can't say for certain until the actual release is out. Issues always do pop up. So in 24.6, we're very likely to add support for two-way audio or audio talk down. So this is the ability to activate a speaker that's attached to a camera and send audio out, broadcast audio out to an attached camera speaker. We're also going to have improved workflows for disabling cameras. Right now in Orchid, if you have a camera that you sort of want to remove. In order to free up a camera license, you have to delete that camera. That means that the video is no longer accessible. 24.6, you'll just be able to disable that camera. You'll still be able to access the camera, access the video, but it will free up a license so you can install a replacement camera, install a temporary camera, workflows like that. We will also have additional video retention configurations. We've got a lot of people based on sort of institutional policies or sometimes even the jurisdiction that they're in that cannot save too much video. So customers who maybe legally or based on organizational policies cannot retain more than 30 days of video, even if they have disk space available to do that. So beginning in 24.6, we'll be able to set those sorts of limits. And we also expect in 24.6 for many cameras, I don't think all cameras, we're still working through a lot of testing, but we will be able to do smart search with camera side motion detection. So draw a box, filter out video so that I only see video where motion happened inside that box that I drew, and leverage camera side motion detection entirely. So we're excited about that as well. All right, so that is everything that's new in Orchid 24.3, a little sneak peek of what's coming in Orchid 24.6. As always, we've got a lot of resources available to our customers and integrators and end users. We've got up-to-date training at training.ipconfigure.com, full user manuals at manuals.ipconfigure.com, and we've got a fantastic support team based here in Norfolk, Virginia. So any questions you might have, any issues you might have, anything you want to know about Orchid, you can go to our support page, support.ipconfigure.com, put in a ticket, place a phone call. We've got folks standing by, happy to answer questions and happy to assist. All right, so that is everything in Orchid 24.3. I'd like to thank everybody for joining, and I hope to see you during the 24.6 release training. Thanks a lot.